break through this energy shield, they tried to kind of take a step back and bring it down to a science, right? They would eventually discover how to get through it. It would take some time, but they would figure it out. And what it was and what they had to do was basically they brought in some more spiritual or enlightened folk. And they literally, I'm not sure if it was monks or what, but they literally figured it out by meditation. They basically had to get into a theta state of consciousness, and more or less, I'm guessing that they had to astral travel. They had to get into their astral body, go through the energy shields, and shut them down. Or they automatically shut down when this happened. When you got to that theta state, your frequency shut the energy shields down. Now, backtrack a little ways, and I forgot to mention this small detail, that when the Bucegi Mountain energy shields activated, right, the high-ranking officer or the high-ranking official at the Bucegi Mountains would receive a phone call from his contact in Iraq, in Baghdad, also at the underground tunnels. They said and told them that upon the activation of the one in the Bucegi Mountains, also the cavern in Baghdad activated a protective energy shield or barrier. So somehow these caverns all over the world were in tune. They were in tune with each other, which is a crazy, interesting feat in itself, right? I don't think anybody expected that, obviously, and it's a pretty mind-blowing revelation. How did these ancient civilizations have the tact to where when you activated these electric energy shields in one area of the world, protecting these hall of records, I guess you'd say, how did they have the tech to let it notify the ones all the way in Baghdad, Iraq, and probably in Mount Kailesh in Tibet, and the one in Antarctica as well?
Mile, use the left 2 lanes to turn left onto Jerome Street.
So, it is also said that there may be one in the United States. There's really no speculation as to where it's located. I've never heard of any speculation at all to where it's located. But I do believe that it's possible that there is, in fact, another Hall of Records in the United States. They like to treat our country, the U.S. is where I'm from. They like to treat it as a new world, when in fact there's been more than enough evidence to state that there was ancient Egyptian cultures here, especially in the big Grand Canyon cover-up. Okay, so there's probably one here as well in North America. So all these activated energy shields, and they were not able to get through until they figured out how to break down the energy shield via a higher state of consciousness or meditation. So upon doing this, they were allowed in the tunnels, the cavern. Now, obviously, as they entered the cavern, they were absolutely mind blown because of what they saw or discovered. The tunnels were perfectly cut. Wall to floor, they had 90-degree angles. Wall to ceiling, 90-degree angles. Also, they had walls that were smooth to the touch, and porous, so oxygen was allowed in like marble. They were smooth to the touch like marble, and they were porous as oxygen could flow in that way. They assume that it's possible, or highly possible, that they used a sort of plasma-like technology to literally melt the rock out of the tunnels. So, and there's actually lore that it goes back to even if you ask the locals around Bucegi, they said that there was a time when they knew something odd was going on in the mountains. Now, this was back in the 90s. That's what's curious about that. Back in the 90s, there was a bunch of locals that said that they could feel a vast energy and hear a machine-like sound coming from the mountains. Some of these locals, as a result of this energy, didn't sleep for weeks at a time. I mean, and that was just simply because they could not because of the noise. They just simply could not sleep. This energy giving off from this, what they believe is a drill, and it was an attempt to drill to this cavern, possibly. Okay, now that's not 100% verified, but I did read, and actually I got a newscast video about this and had somebody translate it because it was all in Romanian. But they did a big old piece on this in Romania, and I actually had the original newscast. It's on YouTube, but it's all in Romanian, so I had it translated. Very intriguing, to say the least. Okay. So, yeah, there's a lot been going on in Romania for a long time about these said caverns. But they get to this room in this massive mountain. They get to this room that's 90 meters in length, and it's dome-shaped, and it's 30 meters tall. And what they discover in this room is nothing short of breathtaking. As they go in, everything's made out of stone. They have a 90-foot ceiling, and each wall is lined with tables. And as they approach the tables, they're smooth to the touch as well. They have ancient cuneiform writing on them, and they stand at the height of the average man, 6 foot. The tabletops are 6 foot tall. So they figure the beings that were sitting at these tables were 12 to 14 feet tall. Also, they would discover a table with a projector-like object on it that had a bunch of cables running to it. On this table, they had many pictures of many different animals and species that have inhabited Earth. And one of the gentlemen, who they called the professor, walked up to the table and he touched 2 of the squares. Suddenly, something activated. Somehow, they tie energy into their stone, almost as if it's a touchscreen. Upon the reaction, the projector projected a life-size image or hologram of the 2 types of beings, or 2 types of species on the table that he had touched, and it crossbred them. It crossbred their DNA and gave you a picture of what this animal or chimera would look like. Then they head into another smaller cavern and to another area of the Hall of Records, and they find a room that has 30 to 40 tablets made out of some sort of odd metal that they did not know exactly what it was, not native to Earth. At first they were confused. They kind of looked at them. They were in a writing they couldn't understand. And they kind of were dumbfounded by them. They couldn't read them. But suddenly, one of the officials or scientists kind of went to wipe one off and slid his hand across it. And again, something activated. And before you know it, in front of them in the middle of the projection room, they have a hologram again. This hologram started at the beginning. And when I say the beginning, I mean the beginning. The beginning of our galaxy, the beginning of our planet, and the beginning of any existence in this galaxy. The Big Bang, if you will. And they all stood mesmerized, in awe. They couldn't believe what they were seeing. Before you know it, 4 to 5 hours later, they snapped back into reality after been watching this for the whole time. They described it as such. They described it as if somebody put a camera in outer space that had been recording for thousands and thousands of years, millions of years. But it was actually high speed, so it was like super fast forwarded, right? And it was showing them everything that took place, from the existence of every species on this planet up to a certain point to the solar system or galaxy itself. So obviously they made a massive discovery that would change the history of mankind. They were all mind blown and baffled. They couldn't believe it. So they're continuing to make their way around the room, and they discover an area of the room that has 3 very large doors. After deciphering the language written on each door, they figured out that one was to the Giza Sphinx, a tunnel. They were underground tunnels. To the Giza Sphinx, one was to Mount Kailesh in Tibet. The other, in the middle, the biggest door, led to Inner Earth. Yes, you heard me right. Inner Earth. So, obviously they're even more mind blown. They can't believe it. Really, these 3 doors lead to underground tunnels to the Giza Sphinx, Mount Kailash, and Inner Earth? Are you kidding me? So, obviously they're all baffled, mind blown, and they continue studying everything about the caverns for the next few years, until eventually they sent teams down each tunnel. Okay, now there's no record from anyone as to what they discovered in these tunnels or what they ran into in these tunnels as they approached the destinations. But it is said that each tunnel was traveled by military personnel, and each tunnel was accurately depicted and led to the locations that they claim they led to, even Inner Earth. Boy, would I have loved to see or hear of the expedition that went, how that went in Middle Earth. Boy, that would be an interesting thing to read on. So basically, I don't know, this just kind of popped in my head. Does this have to do with the journey to the center of the Earth? Could that have been the same expedition? Hard to say. But the next portion of the secrets of the underground tunnels will take us to the Giza Sphinx. And what's under the Giza Sphinx is truly mind-blowing. So I'm going to take a little break here, a little commercial. Make sure you guys stay tuned in. And I hope you enjoy listening to my podcast. Eventually, I have a guest I want to have on here. a gentleman who was in the Navy, and I got to figure out a way to mask his voice because he doesn't want to be on with his voice on. But he claims he was in a fast attack nuclear sub, modernized, and he traveled to Autek military base, which is an underwater military base testing underwater vehicles, supposedly built on the ruins of Atlantis, using Atlantis type powers to build these USOs. And there's a lot of sightings of the USOs around there. So I want to have him on. I want to pick his brain. He has some pretty interesting accounts. He encountered a giant squid that he claimed was the length of their sub, which was 325 feet, 40 feet wide. And he said they had a lot of talk among themselves and their peers and other subs. And he said he's heard some pretty wild accounts of what they've encountered under the ocean. Also, he said there isn't a portion of the ocean that hasn't been discovered or verified. He stated that there were 3 gigantic pyramids under the water. One in front of Antarctica, one in front of the United States, and one on the Pacific Ocean on the west side. So his accounts sound super intriguing. I'm super excited to check them out. I can't wait to interview him. But for now, I'm going to take a break, and I will continue the Bucegi Mountain Secrets and the secrets of the underground tunnels here very shortly. So thank you guys, and I hope you enjoyed.